Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwida Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwida Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwida Wiyaka.
Over time, the rise of modern conveniences has resulted in humans sacrificing time in nature for the perceived comforts of modern housing, concrete, and fast food. Are there hidden consequences of our detachment from the natural world? Mission Evolution Radio Show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore the healing properties of nature is Dee Davidson. Ellen lives in the redwoods of Northern California, where she's fallen in love with the trees. It began when the old growth redwood behind her house visited her in reoccurring dreams. Then she felt called to spend time hiking and meditating in the ancient forests. Over the next 17 years, the trees healed Ellen from fibromyalgia, insomnia, and chronic fatigue, as well as opening up her perception, creativity, and imagination in unexpected ways. Ellen has worked as a creative writing piano elementary school teacher and author. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that beautiful song. I
Isn't
feel
that
like it
gorgeous?
said it all.
It did. It just did. We can close right now. That
Yeah.
was written by our executive producer, Rob McConnell, and it's such a beautiful piece. So, Ellen, your bio states that the old growth redwood behind your house visited you in reoccurring dreams. Please tell us a little bit about those dreams and what you concluded from them.
I moved into this house 33 years ago now, and almost immediately started having dreams that the ancient redwood behind my house was teaching me. At the time, that was beyond belief for me. So I wrote the dreams down in my journal and analyzed them as if the tree was part of me. But then, as time went on and more scientists began to study the ways trees communicate with each other, I realized some of the things the tree had been showing me, like the way the fungi, the mycelial network, communicates between trees who ask for what they need and offer in terms of chemical, phosphorus, nitrogen, whatever, was real. So that was the beginning of me thinking that something was really up here.
So, how far away from your house is that giant redwood?
It's a huge tree, so it feels like it's right there off my back deck. There's a meadow in between, and I would say maybe a quarter to a half of a football field.
Oh my goodness. How old do you suppose that tree is?
I'm not sure. It's hard to tell unless the tree falls and they do a tree ring study, because on wetter years, the tree will grow horizontally more. But I suspect it's 1,000, somewhere between 750 and 1,500 years old.
Oh my gosh, what that tree has seen, huh?
Yeah.
So, so you were just mentioning how they communicate with each other. And do they actually give each other nutrients that's needed?
Through the fungi at their roots, which act like connective tissue or between their roots and each other. Yes, they do.
So they have a synergistic relationship with the fungi as well as each other.
Yes. Yeah.
That's just awesome. I wish we could work together that well, right? Yeah.
Well, I think we can. I think we're actually shut down from a lot of our human potential, and it's in our DNA.
Well, do you think the trees can wake that part of our DNA up?
Absolutely. I think spending time out with wild nature organically opens us up to a vaster intelligence.
What brought you to the conclusion that the trees are sentient?
Well, I didn't believe it for the longest time, and I felt like it was a fantasy, but I was having these experiences, and then they would happen. And one example is in the middle of being really ill, and then my daughter went to the hospital for 10 days, agonizing days, with a ruptured appendix, and
Mm.
I didn't even know if she'd make it at times. So I was eating tranquilizers, and when I emerged a couple weeks later from that experience, I couldn't get off them even though I was on the lowest dose. And I went and told my doctor, and she said, "Nonsense, you should be able to get off these, you're on the lowest dose." And I couldn't. My skin crawled and my brain rattled, and I had fierce rebound insomnia and headaches. And so I went in tears and sat with the old redwoods and was just my whole being was begging for help. And I had this image come through my head of this tincture with little drops. So I went back to the doctor and I said, "Is there any such thing as drops?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, there are those," and prescribed them. And then I was able to reduce my dose so slowly that I wasn't sick.
That's amazing. So the tree gave you the answer. Do you think that the tree got the answer from you and then gave it back to you?
I think the trees are very connected to the unified field. And when we connect into that, there's intelligence about all sorts of things that we can access. And so, no, I don't think the tree goes around knowing what kind of medical support we humans need, but I think they can help us access that knowing.
So your energetic field communes with that of the tree. The tree communes with the unified field, and then that gives you access to the information you needed.
I think so. I think that's how it works. I mean, I don't know. It's mysterious.
Well, how does one meditate with trees? You said you meditated with them.
I usually hike 3 or 4 miles in, and that calms me down. I love to walk. It's not necessary for forest bathing. And then I just sit quietly beside a tree, and trees have this is real science, they have bioelectric fields that are measurable, and so do we humans. And what happens is my system will calm down and go into resonance. The way when you strike a glass and then the note resonates and other glasses will go into resonance. So I feel my whole system calm down and become more receptive. And that's the first thing that needs to happen.
So it makes you wonder, the trees hold enough of a presence and maybe a communal presence that they don't resonate with us. They hold their place and we can resonate with them. Is that the way that's working?
Yeah, I mean, the ancient redwoods can be 3,000 years old
Oh,
and
my.
more for the sequoias. They can be 5,000 years old. So they're doing their own thing. I think they're kind of connecting the cosmos, the solar and starry energy with the earth energy and channeling that up and down. So it's for my little human body that, if I'm lucky, might live 100 years, to sit in that field is like being cradled in a really comforting energy.
Hmm. Well, it's time for us to take a short station break. Ellen and I will return, so please don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Does nature communicate? If so, why can't we hear it? With us this hour discussing the healing power of nature is Ellen D. Davidson, the author of Sacred Forest Bathing. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. And Ellen, that is the question. If nature is indeed communicating, why aren't people hearing it?
Because we're not listening. That's the short
There's a good
answer,
point. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
We have a culture that's evolved with the concept of mind over matter, and we do it with our own bodies. Our bodies give us all kinds of information and signals, and we override them.
And
And
go ahead.
well, it's the same with nature. It's subtle information coming in, and in order to perceive it, we need to slow down and tune in and pay attention.
Does our, everybody I think has these tapes running through their head and thoughts, and what do they call the Buddhists call it the monkey mind? Is that part of what's interfering? Is that why meditation helps you?
Absolutely. I felt often sitting with the trees. I still feel this because I'm a chatterbox, both inside and outside. So when I would go, it's just like that a stream that's all churned up and murky, and then everything settles to the bottom and it gets clear. And that's why spending the time to just sit and be quiet, eventually, without a lot of effort on my part, the thoughts would slow down and just I would become more open and clear and present.
Do you feel like being in the trees field kind of puts you in an altered state of consciousness?
Absolutely. And I think almost everyone feels this. I've heard so many people say, "Oh, it feels so peaceful in here," or calm. If we turn off our electronic devices and stop talking for a few minutes to each other in the forest, there's definitely an almost instant altered state of consciousness that will happen to anyone.
I've done a lot of hiking in my in my day, and I of course live in Colorado. I love the Colorado mountains and the trees here. And many times I've been, hiking along, and then I'll drop down into a place where there's a stream and a bunch of trees, and the sun's coming through the trees. And I swear, I feel like I've stepped into a cathedral. It just has.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're talking about? Is that feeling of the sacred is just right there?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of people call being in the forest, and especially redwood forests, as entering a sacred holy cathedral. And there's no accident that so many people have described it that way.
Mm,
It really does feel.
it holds that energy. So, how does the when you're communing with trees and getting information, how does that information come through? Do you hear words? What goes on?
Multiple ways. Sometimes thoughts that are different than my normal thoughts will just float through my mind, but they're better thoughts or creative ideas that or solutions to something I've been gnawing on that I haven't been able to figure out, and I get peaceful by the tree and suddenly the answer's just there. Sometimes the information comes in somatically in body sensations and body awareness, and it might download into me as conceptual information days later. Sometimes it comes through visually. I'll have a little movie play out in my mind showing me something, and it can even be a smell that will activate, a memory that's really an old one for me that might need clearing, maybe an old trauma or but it comes in every possible way you can imagine.
Do you think it organically, haha, organically targets wherever we're out of balance because it holds such balance?
I think that's one way to put it, yes, I would say yes. How I've been thinking about it is that because these intact forests that have never been harmed or interfered with for millions of years are in a state of integrity, integration, and ecological relationship that's really profoundly balanced. My own being, my body is reminded of what that wholeness feels like. And I think my cells and every part of my system begins to align to a state of wholeness.
Which brings us to the burning question. What is forest bathing?
Forest bathing, when I first began my odyssey out in the woods, I'd never heard the term. I didn't know it existed, and I had a meditation teacher who suggested that we follow the juice. And what he meant by that was that we did what gave us joy. So I started on free days waking up and playing a game with myself. Oh, what do I want to do today? And every day every time I had a free day, it was go to the forest. And so I started doing that and found profound healing. Then about, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I started reading all this information about forest bathing. It was coming out of Japan, and they had scientifically studied all the healing effects. And then I went, aha, that's why I've been healing. That's what's been happening to me. I didn't even know.
What's the history of forest bathing?
It um, comes from a word Shinrin-yoku in Japan, which means forest bathing, i.e., going into a forest and being in that energetic bath, the field of the trees. And they have proven there are so many healing effects from lowering blood pressure, reducing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, improving moods, boosting the immune system, speeding wound healing, helping children with ADHD, and on it goes.
So, how can they tell, walking in the forest has any different effects than, say, taking a nice walk in the city streets?
They've been measuring people's vital signs and blood pressure, and they contrasted it with people in Tokyo. In fact, some of the people they were studying were businessmen from Tokyo. And one of the cool things I really love sharing is that they discovered that even a day or two of forest bathing, the benefits lasted for these high-powered people going back to the big city for a whole month.
It kind of percolates then. That speaks to it being returning us to a natural state rather than imposing something, doesn't it? Where we'll take it and hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, what are some of the techniques that people can use to practice forest bathing or nature therapy?
Well, first is to find a place that uh, the person has access to. The closer to home, the better, because doing it repeatedly is more beneficial. And it's wonderful to develop a relationship with the earth wherever we are. So that's one. Two, when you find your spot and go, uh, turn off all the electronic devices and the music, anything that's distracting. And if you go with a person, practice silence, at least for a while, at least for a couple hours, and then pay attention to what calls you. What you'll feel that little tug in our guts have intelligence, our hearts have intelligence. This is all proven, and we can kind of feel where we're drawn. So notice which trees, or maybe it's a rock or a creek or a river, but notice where your spot is, where you feel called. Because we have an energetic affinity with different spots and different trees, and then spend time opening the senses. All sorts of mindfulness and breath practices and even restorative yoga will work here, just being calm and sitting, but pay attention to what you see, feel, like the wind or the air on your skin, touch, taste, hear, and that helps us drop in more deeply.
When you have set up say, a relationship with a place like that, really communing with it, I don't know if there's been any studies done on this or not. You'd have to tell me. If you simply drop in and bring that place to mind, will it have a similar effect on your physiology?
They've done a ton of studies on athletes, and people who are fighting cancer about how the visualization our bodies react to those as if they are the real thing. So I think that is really beneficial. However, for me, I have a caution here. We're so virtual, and we're definitely going down the rabbit hole with AI into an increasingly virtual reality. I think the balance to that is definitely to try and make contact with the physical plane, real nature experience as much as possible.
But then once you do, it's kind of a medicine you have in your hip pocket when you're in trouble, right?
Absolutely. It's very calming. Yeah.
That's a beautiful concept. So your bio states that the trees healed you from all sorts of things. How do you think they did that?
Actually, that's somewhat mysterious to me. I know all the benefits of lowering stress hormones, and I think that had a big impact upon me. I think also it was states of gratitude, awe, wonder, joy. They're all very healing. And you mentioned before that when we go into the holy cathedral of the trees, we feel reverent. And I did. It was so beautiful. It is so beautiful. So I was accessing that state of wonder and just the incredible miracle of being alive on this planet that has created so much beauty. I think that deeply healed me.
Mm, I can see how it might. Well, it is time for us to take yet another station break. Ellen and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. When do we lose our way? Can the trees help us find home? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing forest bathing and its benefits is Ellen D. Davidson. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, it seems like one of the things that we're kind of talking around but absolutely seeing is that humanity has kind of lost its way as a result of its separation from nature. Do you think that forest bathing and people becoming aware of spending time in nature and doing so can start to turn that around?
Absolutely. It's a love affair. And when we let ourselves fall in love with the natural world and all the beauty and the different forms of expression, it opens up different parts of ourselves, and it's a mutual relationship. The Institute of Heart Math has just done a great study with red maples, and they had people send love and gratitude and appreciation, admiring these trees, and measured the electronic fields around the trees, and they expanded hugely when people were appreciating them.
Well, the Heart Math is a wonderful group and doing some very profound, very scientific studies. One of the things, of course, is they worked with heart, right? The heart of the human being and how that puts out quite a field, much larger even than the field that the brain puts out. So if we fall in love or are allowed to allow ourselves to really heart connect, isn't that a stronger form of connecting electromagnetic field with the trees?
Oh, absolutely. It's mutual. We go and wow, how cool is that? Look at this one. And while we're doing that, we're expanding and then they're expanding. So it's a mutual relationship that's so reciprocal and I think might be key to restoring both our own health and well-being and communities, but also the ecology.
Well, if you think about it, if that love and appreciation that humans put out have a profound effect on the plants and probably the animals around us, and yet we've become so shut down on the heart, that would kind of explain this is the separation, the horrific separation we're experiencing these days, wouldn't it?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So, we spend a lot of time in front of our computers, and sometimes, you can look up nature scenes or nature sounds. Is does that help at all, or is it too removed?
Actually, they've proven that bird song, even on a recording, has hugely beneficial properties for our health in lowering stress and improving mood. Probably that's because we evolved with birds outside for the most part, and when birds are safe, they sing. So we know it's safe. So most likely that's that way, but what was your question? I got lost.
Maybe I was lost too. We probably better go on to the next one. So, do you think that there's a genetic memory in human beings that align them with the safe feeling of remembering on some level that if the birds are singing, it must be safe out there?
I think our genetic potential is so untapped. I was just reading Greg Braden's Pure Human, and he was talking about hybrid AI humans and how if we do that, we might be unknowingly shutting down some of our untapped DNA potentials. And so I've been thinking about that lately because my experience at the trees was so opening. I became more clairvoyant, more telepathic, that really I could experience in real life. Like somebody would think of something they were going to say to me and I'd hear it right before they said it. Those kinds of things opened up for me after spending this time with the trees. And I can't even imagine what might open up for all of us if we tune more deeply into nature.
And a little less deeply into our computers, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to throw technology out, but we do need to be discerning and wise in
Mhm.
how we use it.
And proceed with caution. I know personally, AI can write some beautiful things, but I can immediately spot something that's been written by AI versus something that's been written by a human being. I just don't feel the heart in AI. Um, and you can't. What do they say? You can't replace Mother Nature. So, from what you're saying, the trees, even though they don't necessarily have a heart, they're putting out heart energy.
You know, Scientists just found out the Earth has a heartbeat. I'm not so sure the trees don't have some kind of rhythmic heart field, but it's
Well,
not
there's sap.
localized.
There's
Yeah,
sap. Goes something's moving in there, right?
yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure they have conscious intelligence, and that's pretty scientifically proven now. They can even recognize if someone's wearing a red or a blue shirt. There's some studies showing that.
How did they
And
figure that out?
yeah, I don't remember all the science. Did read it, but it was a while back. But they're much more conscious. And one study I do remember when Douglas firs were being attacked by, I think it was bark beetles, they put out chemical signals to their neighbors who immediately started closing their bark down so that they'd be more protected.
So they even give warning signals to their neighbors.
Yeah. So they are conscious and intelligent, and that's proven. And also proven more interactive with humans than we knew. They've been on the planet, I think it's 400 million years to Homo sapiens is about 300,000 and humans at all are about 6 million. So the plants, the trees, the green ones have created the environment that's allowed us to live.
And we're definitely threatening that environment now, aren't we?
Absolutely. As we restore the green world, we will be healing and restoring ourselves. It goes together.
I mean, you can't plant a tree or a plant without feeling nurturing when you're in the process of doing it. I mean, any gardener will tell you that when they come out of the garden, they feel different. They feel different. Is that synergy in action?
It's so multi-level. I mean, one thing is when gardeners put their hands in the soil, they're being exposed to a type of bacteria that has been shown to boost serotonin, which is the feel-good chemical in our brains. So, or one of them. So we're boosting our immunity and our microbiome and our serotonin and the beauty and the calm of it, and probably even more than we know yet.
It's going to be interesting to see in years to come what we did to ourselves by separating. And speaking of separation from nature, there's a lot. In fact, most of it live in large cities where if you see a tree at all, you'd be lucky. What do you have to say to those people? How can they take advantage of this new information that we have that's ancient? How can they take advantage of that? What do they need to do?
Well, bring some nature into apartments and homes and offices, even if it's just a beautiful house plant that you get to know and tend and care for. Find local parks, make more local parks. I read a long time ago that in New York, they ripped up some parking lots and planted community gardens. So we need more things like that, green spaces that are accessible to everyone. A lot of cities right now have programs to plant more trees, and that's wonderful.
We can also mention their ability to clean up the environment. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Um, they cool the environment by 10 degrees. If there are trees in a city versus just asphalt and pavement, it'll be 10 degrees cooler, which is really going to be important for all of us. Also, through transpiration, trees create more potable water. In other words, they bring in the water from the atmosphere, and what they don't use, they evaporate out to all of us. So that's really cooling. And of course, there's the exchange of carbon where the trees are absorbing the carbon and then putting out oxygen, which is what we need to breathe. And that also has a climate cooling effect.
That's, you know, there's lots to recommend planting a bunch of trees, isn't there?
Yeah, and it needs to be strategically done. We don't want to plant trees that need tons of water in areas that are subject to drought. There are other trees that don't need as much water, such as olives. And we need to think before we do it. And also maybe think with nature and let nature guide us in what to plant where.
In other words, how did nature do it in the first place and try to mirror that?
That's biomimicry, and that's great. I also think we can literally ask and then see what ideas we come up with. Just put the question out when we're in the presence. This woman, Osprey Oriole Lake, wrote a book, The Story is in Our Bones, and she talked about how most of Western cultures and other cultures too made big decisions outside, but by what were called council trees. And I know my thoughts are different. What I come up with when I'm outside in the presence of the trees is just subtly different than what I come up with when I'm sitting looping through my mind and googling to find an answer. I get different answers. So I
I
think we should include nature in the conversation.
Well, can't you just imagine if our country leaders would sit in a beautiful sanctuary forest before they made some of the decisions? They might be different decisions, huh?
Yeah. And I think nature's so vastly intelligent and understands the complexity of these interrelationships that we'll get a more holistic view.
Well, we need to somehow include nature into the council because humans are a little short-sighted right now, aren't they?
Yeah, we can't. I personally do not think that having profit be the prime value works. It could be a value, but it needs to be down the list after life and health and clean water and clean air and all the things we absolutely need for our species to survive.
Very well put. So, the council trees. Tell me again what tribe practiced that?
All of Western Europe and also the Iroquois or Iroquois, depending on how you pronounce it. But so a lot of Native Americans would make decisions with council trees, and but surprisingly, it's most of Western Europe did that too,
Amazing.
and
So
Greece.
yeah, the Celts. Well,
Yeah.
it's time for us to take a station break. Please stay with us as Ellen and I continue to explore the power of the natural world. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is nature conscious? If so, what is it thinking? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Ellen D. Davidson. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, what is nature nature intelligence?
Um, it's the evolutionary intricacy and how beautifully everything adapts. Uh, it's it's hard to just put a finger on one thing because it isn't one thing. It's relationships.
So the way nature relates to all the members in it is the intelligence? Is that
I think so. I think it's a very non-local and diversified intelligence. We've gone into a more specialized intelligence and a mental intelligence, which has value, but our bodies, for example, are nature, and our cells pick up trillions of bits of information for every little bit that we become conscious of. And
do you I'm sorry, go ahead.
so our bodies, this is an example of nature, our bodies coordinate all these trillions of bits of information trying to create the most optimum possible health and well-being for all of us moment to moment. And I think that's what nature is always doing, finding balance and harmony.
I've heard it said, and I teach it a lot, that illness is simply imbalance. So it makes perfect sense that if nature is always seeking balance, if we become more aligned with nature, it's got to be healing, right?
I think so, yeah. And healing for the environment too. When things get out of balance and nature responds with, say, more fires because there's more droughts, that's still an attempt to bring things back to balance. Just like when we're sick and we get a fever, that's our body's attempt to fight off the invader.
So if we look at what nature's doing, it gives us an idea of where the imbalances are.
Mhm,
Ah,
mhm.
I like that. I like that. So I've heard, a lot of people that are fairly sensitive saying the whales are calling to us, the dolphin are calling to us. Have you heard that? And if so, what do you think they're trying to get across to us?
I think they're saying wake up and respect life. But yeah, they've been having all those mysterious groupings, huge groupings of whales never before seen. I do know AI right now is has noticed that there's phonetic syntax in whale sounds, and so people are using AI to try and find out if this is a language and what it means. They're doing something similar with dolphins too. But I feel like Aboriginal peoples and our ancestors did probably know what they were saying. And I feel like that's a human capacity. So I don't really farm out all of our power and potential and think that it all has to come from a mechanical device that we invented, because I think it's a capacity we actually have in our cells and DNA that we haven't yet, or maybe ancient peoples did, but we've lost and we haven't realized and explored to the fullest potential. Uh, I think they're just cautioning us. The oceans are warming up, they're getting more acidic, the corals dying, and I think the whales are calling to us to wake up because we're off track in terms of thriving life.
Humans have come to rely on verbal language, and then from what you're saying, if the AI is trying to listen to what the whales are saying, they're trying to shift it into a verbal language. But isn't it a whole body experience, really? From what you've been saying, a lot of the information is coming through electromagnetic fields.
Yeah, and states of consciousness. And we all know a state of consciousness when we're feeling peaceful, or we hold a newborn baby and our hearts just open with love. And that's not a word experience. It's a state of being. And I think the whales do transmit a state of being. One time I was on a little boat in Hawaii with a bunch of tourists and all these kids, and some of the kids were squabbling and arguing over toys and this and that. And all of a sudden the whales came, and everyone on that boat completely changed. We were a unified field of bliss.
I have been around them, and they they do leave an impression. Big whales, big trees. Somehow they really carry a presence, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, how can nature help us during these critical and volatile times?
I think right now, maintaining some peace and groundedness and joy and appreciating the miracle. We're alive, and that's so improbable and so miraculous. We don't want to miss that while we're so busy being worried about all the very legitimate things we have to worry about right now. So I think touching our feet to the earth and grounding and being present and being here will help us anchor so we can meet the moment from a more authentic and beautiful place.
I wonder about perspective. You mentioned how old these beautiful redwoods are, and how, we're not even a blink in their eye, a lifetime of a human being. And as humans, we tend to look at the current events and everything that's going on right now and get absorbed in it. And yet, what kind of perspective can those ancient ones bring?
Well, they're so old that they sort of automatically put us in perspective. My husband and I joke because we look like ants next to these trees. We're so little and they're so big, and a whole forest of them. And one time we were just cracking up saying, we humans were like, if we were what humans were watching the ants saying, oh, the whole universe was created just for us and we're supposed to take charge of it, and it would seem ridiculous. And somehow being in these ancient forests with these huge trees puts my human life in perspective as I belong to the whole, but I don't control the whole.
Mm. What do they say? You're just a moment's sunshine, right?
Yeah, I hope I'm sunshine.
Well, you resemble sunshine. I'm just so you know. So, what do you think the trees outside of Wake Up? What do you think they're trying to express to us right now?
Well, everything alive wants to live. I'm convinced of that. We all value our lives, and I I think they're aware of the other trees and the forests that have been cut down and the forests that have been burning. I don't think just because we're in a place that's intact that they don't know. I think they get messengers through the atmosphere of what's going on, through the soil, through the water. And I think the trees, like all living beings, want to live. So I think they want our help in restoring forests.
It would certainly serve all of us. How can spending time with ancient trees expand our consciousness and aid evolution?
I think it helps us tap into um, our larger selves. We're more connected, we're more interconnected, we're entangled and entwined, and so we expand past a lot of the ordinary limitations and are able to grow. And I don't know where we're going to grow to. I just see that potential.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because, we've devolved into thinking that we have to, one individual, all isolated, has to come up with all the answers. When indeed, what you've been saying and what we've been talking about this hour is that if we make ourselves available, all of nature can be part of the knowing and the information. What do you think the likelihood is that we can get the message out there so that people will start forest bathing?
I think it's happening. It's happening on multiple fronts all at once. I have my little personal human interest story of how it healed me, and then there's so many scientists coming out with how the trees communicate with each other and the benefits for us of spending time with them. So, and I think people are looking right now for things to help improve inner peace and calmness because it's hard not to get upset these days.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So, I would be remiss. We're just about out of time, Ellen. It's just flown. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what's your mission?
My mission. One main mission I have is just I want to be with all this beauty in my life while it's here. And I think there's value in being with because every being loves attention. So I want to devote myself to giving that attention to all this amazing beauty that has been created. And the other thing is I I really want people to know that when we work when we do our best, put our best foot forward to work with nature and her principles, nature can respond with miracles beyond our wildest imaginations of healing and restoration for both us and the environments.
That is a beautiful mission, Ellen. And we are out of time. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Our guest this hour has been Ellen D. Davidson, the author of Sacred Forest Bathings, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places. To find out more about Ellen, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, ellenddavidson.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us again right here on X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, where this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.